What's up? Welcome to Backend Stuff. I'm Jacob Blitzo. Today we are going to use Plug.Conn to track sessions of authorized accounts. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. And we are going to open up our Real Deal API project. We want to expand the lib directory, the Real Deal API web, controllers, and the account controller.ex file. And we're going to add a put session in our sign-in function. And we're going to put that, let's see, right above the put status. We're going to pipe it in. And we're going to just do plug.conn.put_session. And this takes a key, which can be an atom or a string. If you use an atom, it's automatically converted to a string. But I'm going to use an atom, so :account_ID. And then since we already have the account returned from authenticating, we're going to grab the account ID from it and store that value. So this puts a specified value, which in this case is our account ID, in the session for a given key, which is account_ID. Now, once we do this, we can retrieve it with just plug.conn.getSession, pass in the connection struct and our account_ID key, and we now have the account ID. So that's all we need to do in our account controller. And now we're going to make our own plug, and we are going to expand our auth directory. And let's go ahead and say file new. And we're going to call this file set_account.ex. And a plug has the following structure. So it's a def module like you've always seen. We want to import our plug.conn, and then we need a def init that will take options and then do end. And we're just going to leave that empty for now. And then we need a def call that takes two parameters, the construct and then the options as well, and then do an end. And we're going to leave that empty as well. These two functions are part of the plug behavior, and they're defined in plug.ex. Init is used to initialize the plug with options that can be used in the call function. And then call is where all the magic happens. We take the plug.conn struct and we return a new one. What we want this plug to do is we want it to fetch our account ID from the session we set in our sign-in function. So right now I'm just going to do an underscore in front of options because we actually aren't going to do anything in our initialize function. And I'm going to put an underscore in front of our options on the call function because we only care about the construct. Let's retrieve our account ID value. Account_ID equals, and then since we imported plug.conn, we don't have to do plug.conn get session. We can just do get_session, and we pass in the construct and then the key of the value we want. And our key is account_ID. So now if the account ID is nil, this means the account hasn't been authenticated and we should return an unauthorized error. So let's go ahead and create an alias. And it will do our real deal API web.auth.error response because we already created our unauthenticated error response, if you remember in prior videos. If account ID is nil, we want to raise the unauthorized error response. So if account_ID equals nil, then do, and then raise error response.unauthorized. If we made it through this, that means our account ID is not nil. And now we can use the account ID to fetch our account. And then we're going to use assign to store the full object in the connection, giving us the ability to access it with other plugs. Assigns is storage in a map. So you just need a key to retrieve it. Once we have our account, let's get our account. So account equals, we need to have access to our account's context file. So we need to create another alias here. And that's real deal API.accounts. And then we're just going to do accounts.getAccount by ID. And we're going to pass in our account ID that we just grabbed from our session storage. And then we can create a condition clause. If account ID and account exist, then we want to assign our account object to an account key. And assign requires us to pass in our connection struct, the key that we're storing it under, which is :account, and then the struct we're put in there. And that is what we just retrieved here. If account ID and account are not true, it means they're nil or something and they don't exist. We want to have a fallback clause that will always be true. So true. And then we want to do assign again, pass in con, and then account as our key, and then just nil. So the object is nil. One last thing we want to do is to check that account isn't already stored in our assigns storage. If it is already there, we should just return the construct the way it is. So if we go above everything we just wrote in our call function and just do a simple if check. So if con.assigns and then opening square bracket, :account, closing square bracket, do, if this exists, we're just going to return the construct the way it is. And if it doesn't exist, else, then we want to go ahead, grab our ID and assign the object. So we want everything underneath here. We're just going to cut and then paste in our else block there. And then I'm just going to clean this up and tab this over where it should have been tabbed. There we go. This way, we always check if there's already an account object in our assigns storage. We don't do anything. If it doesn't exist, then we try to retrieve it and set it. All right. And now all we have to do is use this plug and add it in our router. So let's go to our router. And just like we did here in the auth with our pipeline, we can use our set account plug the same exact way. So plug, and then real deal API web .auth.set account. And then so every time we access a endpoint that is in our protected endpoints, we're going to be setting our account or retrieving our account through assigns. And then there's one more thing we want to do in our pipeline just for our API. We want to use a built-in function or a built-in plug that already exists, and that's :fetch session. And this just will ensure that the session that we're trying to find is always going to be fetched. So our account ID should always be there. Now, when we are in our controllers and have access to the connection struct, we can grab any account information we need just by calling con.assigns.account, which is really cool. Let's save it. I want to just show you that it works, right? So let's go into our account controller. And if you recall, one of our protected endpoints calls show, and we can get our account by the ID, right? So if we go back to our router, we have our protected endpoint by ID, and it calls the show function. So inside show, if we don't do the get account right here, right? Let's just comment that out. And then instead of passing the account we just retrieved from the database, we can actually call con.assigns.account. And just from signing in, our account object should be there. It's just yelling at us because we're not using ID, which is fine. And now let's go ahead and test this out. So let's go ahead and open our Docker dashboard. Let's just make sure our database is running. And then we need our terminal. And we need a CD into our project. So CD, mine is in documents, develop BS real deal API. And now we can run our server. So mix phx.server. All right. And now we're running on localhost. And now if we log in or sign in with Hopscotch. So let's go to our sign in post and our body. I'm going to log in with client2 at realdealapi.com. Hashed password is real password. So go ahead and sign in. We get our ID and our token. I'm going to copy the token without the quotation marks. And then we're going to get account by ID. And in our header, we just want to make sure we put our bearer token in the authorization value. And then we want to grab our ID without quotations and just make sure it's at the end here. And if you saved this like I did, you might already have the ID there, but we'll just make sure it's the same. And now when I send this, we should get our account back. And there we go. We get our email, hash password, and the account ID. And if you recall, we're just calling our assigns storage and getting our account back without actually fetching it. So that is pretty cool. So this will be super helpful as we start using plugs as middleware, and middleware in quotations. That's just like what you would call it in like a Node.js and Express project. But we can use plugs as middleware to verify the authenticated account can access the information they're trying to. So like, for example, if you only want to allow an account owner or an admin to update their account information, you don't want any authenticated account to have access to change other accounts. So we can double check, like as we grab an object to update that information, if the current session account ID does not match the account ID in the object we're updating, they're not a validated or authenticated user to have access to that. And we can throw necessary error responses and protect other user data, which I think is pretty cool. So as always, if you need help or want to check out the solutions, check out that GitHub link in the description. And if you have more questions or just want to hang out and chat, join my Discord server, Backend Stuff. That link is in the description as well. If you want to learn how to build scalable, production-ready APIs, hit that subscribe button now. See you next time.